Hey everybody, I'm Zach.
And I'm Jesse.
And you're watching Disruptive Investing. In Disruptive Investing news this week, Volkswagen just sent out an internal memo last week that they leaked the fact that they're going to be cutting about $11 billion in costs.
VW is desperately trying to get its margins back up. Last year, VW had a profit margin of 3.6%. Their goal is to get that number up to 6.5%.
Now, we've talked about this before. You don't generally get to better margins just by cutting costs. You get there by vertically integrating and by making amazing products.
And I don't see any of that in this plan.
This is a plan of desperation designed by a corporate culture where nobody in the C-suite knows what innovation looks like.
I mean, cutting 1/5 of their administrative staff, okay, that does save money, but it also reveals that you had a bloated corporate structure full of managers and VPs and senior this and executive that didn't really do anything.
Yeah, you don't right the ship by just throwing people overboard. You right the ship by finding where the holes are, fixing them, and then pumping out the water. Now, I will say that the press quote from VW's CEO of passenger cars, Thomas Schaefer, was promising. He said, "We will need to operate with fewer people in many areas at Volkswagen in the future. This doesn't mean more work for fewer people, but rather shedding old habits and saying no to duplicating efforts and inefficiencies."
VW announced that it'll cut their product cycle to 3 years from 50 months, slash overall production times, and offer fewer model options and trims.
Plans for their new 800 million euro R&D site in Wolfsburg, Germany have also been scrapped. Schaefer said last week at a staff meeting, quote, "With many of our pre-existing structures, processes, and high costs, we are no longer competitive as the Volkswagen brand." But here's the thing. Herbert Diess was trying to get VW competitive for years before VW forced him out. Remember, he was there from 2018 to 2022 saying all the same stuff. But the families that run VW don't know how to compete in this new world of EVs. They waited too long. They fell too far behind. Diess was trying to turn this giant ship around, and he failed because of the VW shareholders and the unions.
And this feeds into the next part here, this story about Sweden's unions fighting Tesla. This is a much bigger story than just Sweden.
Yeah, this is basically evolving into a European labor union versus Tesla story. And you may ask, what's the big problem here? Why can't Tesla just allow Giga Berlin to unionize? Don't they want their workers to be happy?
I think what Elon has learned from watching the UAW in the United States and the unions in Europe is that as soon as your company gets into a them against us mentality with your workers, you're just fighting yourself from within.
And that's why Tesla not only pays their workers well, but also offers them a Tesla stock plan. Over the years, we've talked to many Tesla employees who are so excited about Tesla's stock plan. Now, you don't get this from day one, and you do have to work for the company for a while. And that means you have to be dedicated to working for Tesla. But after you work for them long enough to trigger the stock plan, which is generally, I think, a year, you get to buy Tesla stock at a discounted rate.
And what this does is it turns that employee-employer relationship into, I'm an employee, but I'm also an owner of the company. And so what does that mean when you're working on a line, let's say, building Teslas?
It means you have an incentive beyond your hourly salary to do the best for the company because the company is you. Ask around at other big auto companies, and most of their workers don't have stock in the company. And why would they want to? I mean, look at Ford or GM stock over the past 10 years. It's been flat. Now look at Tesla stock over the past 10 years. Many Tesla workers have become millionaires by investing part of their salary into Tesla stock.
So it's not that unions are necessarily bad. They have a role to play in protecting workers from poor working conditions, improving safety, and making sure that workers are fairly paid. But if Tesla is already doing that by being one of the safest, best-paying employers, then allowing the unions into Tesla will actually slow them down.
And let's get back to a topic we discuss a lot on the show, which is robots. Tesla will be the first auto manufacturer to introduce humanoid robots into their production lines. That's just going to be a fact. And when that day comes, it will start to replace human workers.
This is nothing new. We've seen one-arm robots replace human workers before. If Tesla has union workers when this happens, there is going to be a way bigger fight than if Tesla doesn't have union workers.
Because the unions are going to fight tooth and nail to keep humanoid robots out of the workforce. It just makes sense. A humanoid robot will replace probably at least 4 human workers. Now, I'm on the side of humanity here, but that doesn't necessarily mean I'm on the side of human workers versus Tesla bots. I think Tesla bots are going to be doing a lot of jobs that humans don't necessarily want to do. Dangerous things, monotonous things, repetitive things. And when you have a human workforce, you can't just retrain them all as technology changes.
Sad to say, but as new technologies come about, most people who have been doing a certain task a certain way for decades can't usually pivot and learn the new skill or trade.
But robots can. Overnight, you can retrain your robot workforce with new skills that would have taken humans months or years to learn. Now, to appease the unions, VW has originally said that no jobs would be lost before 2029.
But if you've been following Volkswagen, you know that they've been cutting jobs already.
Volkswagen's Zwickau site, the one that's all about electric vehicles, has a whopping 10,000 employees. But they've been cutting jobs like crazy because, let's face it, the demand for their cars is dropping like a lead balloon. And it's not just a few jobs here and there. We're talking 500 temporary positions getting the axe next year.
But wait, there's more. At their software subsidiary, Cariad, a mind-blowing 2,000 out of the 6,500 employees are going to be out of work in the next 2 years. Can you believe it? It's like they're trying to make a Volkswagen-sized hole in the job market.
So as disruptive investors, the complicated part is we not only have to keep our eye on disruptive technologies, but we also have to keep our eye on the pushback against those technologies. We should be keeping a close eye on what's happening with the Swedish strike against Tesla because, as we've been reporting on Tesla Time News, this strike is spreading to other countries.
Just in the past couple weeks, Denmark and Norway have had unions sympathetic to IF Metal in Sweden jump on board and say that they will also support the strike.
Now, so far, this hasn't affected Tesla in Norway and Denmark, but it could lead to that. Make no mistake, I believe what started in Sweden is actually labor's attempt to get into Giga Berlin. I don't believe Elon will allow Giga Berlin to unionize, but this is not going to go down without a fight. So stay tuned, and you can always trust us to keep you informed over on Tesla Time News every week on the Now You Know channel. Because again, I do think, as we talked about on Tesla Time News, I think this might actually come down to Elon having to threaten to pull out of certain countries because he's not going to sign with the unions.
And I think that there's kind of a disconnect between what labor is all about. Labor is supposed to basically be against a corporation because the corporation is, run by a bunch of capitalists. It's supposed to be pretty much socialist. And yet owning the means of production is something that Tesla is allowing their employees to do.
Exactly. And the other thing is the Swedish strike is based on, we don't even have numbers, but it's a very small number of employees that even want to, join the union. I think in a way, Elon should just say hold up your hands. Who wants to join the union? Because most of them don't.
And it's not joining a union. It's having a
collective bargaining agreement. But look, the whole point of a collective bargaining agreement is to basically mimic what a union would do if people are upset. Everyone seems to be happy with their pay. They seem to be happy that they get Tesla stock. They seem to be happy with the working conditions. It's just the unions, I think, are pressuring because they know that they're going to lose out on union members.
I think that the other thing that we're not talking about is that Tesla is able to break this strike. They have plenty of people who seem to be able to doing the jobs that, in terms of the people who are on strike, they're able to find workers who will do that job. So calling it a strike is not the same as, normally when you have a teachers union or a UAW, when they go on strike, everybody goes on strike. You don't have that many people who are going to work outside of that. I think that because Tesla doesn't have a factory in Sweden, and I don't think that they ever will now, it's more of an idle threat because it's not a lot of work that needs to be done. We're fixing cars. This is not a big deal.
You just brought up a really good point, which is I think Elon's going to stay clear of putting any more gigafactories on the European continent because of this. I think that, it was hard enough for him to go into Giga Berlin, into Germany, which is the heart of union. He needed a factory somewhere in Europe. Mm-hmm. But now I think he's going to steer clear. He's just going to go to countries where he's not going to have to worry about unionizing.
And when we're seeing all of these cars being imported from Giga Shanghai into Europe and lots of other markets around the world, why wouldn't you just build another factory in China or Thailand? I think that Thailand has a lot of the benefits that China has, probably even better benefits in terms of even cheaper labor, and you don't have to worry about the Chinese government. And now you have the Thai government who is going to be super happy with you.
And you're closer to Europe, I think.
I think you're slightly.
Right.
I don't know. I'm sure that there's other hiccups in terms of ports and train lines and suppliers, but if they could make it work in Shanghai in the middle of a watermelon field, I just feel like they're going to be able to make it also work in Thailand. I think they're going to be able to make it work in Mexico. And all of these places I feel like are going to be a lot less union than the European Union.
How about East Coast of the United States? It's easier to ship across the Atlantic than it is to ship from Fremont. So
right. I wouldn't be surprised if we see, somewhere in the mid-Atlantic / south-ish area. These are all great places for factories. But let's not forget, Giga Austin, they have so much fucking land in Austin.
True.
We got to drive by it in Austin the other week. It was amazing to see how much land they have.
I know. Yeah, we just focus on the actual buildings, but there's so much land.
Humongous. Like the Gigafactory is already humongous down there. We almost drove all the way to San Antonio, just like on a whim one day while we were in Austin. It's not that far away. No. I was expecting, because it's Texas, I was expecting all the cities to be like 4 hours away from each other.
No, yeah, they're all like an hour and a half to 2 hours away from each other.
And what we've been learning is that San Antonio is a much cheaper city to live in. Right. So a lot of Tesla workers are being bussed in from San Antonio. And I think that they can keep that kind of thing up.
Yep.
And just keep growing Austin. And Austin itself is a growing city.
True.
So I don't know. I'm excited about Giga Austin almost more than any of these other places, because it seemed like a great place to have a Gigafactory.
Yeah. And again, you're not going to need human workers for much longer. Thanks so much for joining us on Disruptive Investing. We'll see you next week.